Saw your Dorkmobile in the parking lot. What does it get, like 4 miles to the gallon?
Try double that. Classic Trans Am, vintage American muscle. Please.
Yeah, my Xterra's pretty sweet. Luxurious yet rugged. Leave it to the Japanese.
Xterra's not even a real word.
Actually, it is. It's Latin for earth.
Oh, so you drive an X-Earth.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'd rather drive a classic Trans Am than an X-Earth. Idiot.
If I were an idiot, I'd be driving a Trans Am.
If you were driving a Trans Am, you would be the smartest idiot in the whole world.
Idiot. You're the idiot. Nice comeback. I was making fun of your comeback. That's why it worked.
Totally got the best of that interchange.
Hey. No, I can talk.
Well,
That's a great time.
wish I had my cell phone, but I left it inside, so...
Would that make you happy?
What's that?
If you had your cell phone, it would make you happy.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Dwight. Hey!
You can't go
Dwight,
with me
come.
yet.
He's an idiot. The man is an idiot, ladies and gentlemen.
What if he dies in the fire, and that's the last thing you ever said to him?
I didn't say it to him. I said it about him.
Here we go, College Roadshow. Gotta bring our A game. What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life. Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing.
I always wonder what people who come for the first time think when they sit down and they start seeing something like that before a message. But reality is, that's a great summary of a lot of the message or the core teaching of what's called the wisdom literature in Scripture. If you read through Proverbs, Job, Ecclesiastes, known as the wisdom literature in the Bible, that's one of the central themes is don't be an idiot. Think about what an idiot would do and don't do that. That's actually really good advice for life. It's for advice you'll see throughout Scripture, as a matter of fact, which we're going to look at here in just a few minutes. We are wrapping up this morning a series we started about a month ago on the concept of You Incorporated. If there was a company called You Incorporated and you were hired to work at You Incorporated at various positions in the company, what would your job future and job prospects be like? So for instance, let's just say that You Incorporated hired you to be the CFO of You Incorporated. How long do you think you'd be able to keep your job at You Incorporated as the CFO? Or how good are you with budgeting and managing your finances in such a way that you're able to accomplish all the purposes that You Incorporated needs to accomplish? We also looked at the next week after that about what kind of manager you are. Every good company organization has to have somebody who keeps everything on task, whether it be a foreman, a senior chief, a manager, something, who keeps everybody kind of following the policy guide and doing what they need to do. And in our own life, we might call that self-control. And then last time we were together, looked at what kind of security does your company have at You Incorporated? Is it like mall security, or is it like one of the lockdown secure facilities we have at a lot of our government institutions? Just how secure are the things that you need to keep sanctified or secure in your life? And this morning, we're going to wrap it up looking at the role of the CEO. I know it's become, it's made headlines recently over what happened in New York with the healthcare, or United Healthcare CEO being gunned down on the streets of New York. Long before that, though, I remember seeing a talk about the role of a CEO and what a CEO does. And it wasn't a TED Talk, but it was a talk kind of like that. And the CEO was talking about how, although everybody sees the role of a CEO as the glamour job and the job that seems like everybody in the company wants to aspire to, his whole talk was about how it's honestly the worst job to have in the company. There are a lot of things to do that are a lot more fun and enjoyable to do than be the CEO. And you're kind of watching this going, oh, yeah. Oh, cry me a river, sir, with how much money you make. Because he says that's what we all think of. We think about the books that CEOs like Jack Welch and Lee Iacocca write, and the honor, the recognition, and the fame that sometimes goes with being a large company CEO. Think about the power that comes with that, or the perks of the job, or the salary of the job. He says, but what people don't realize is it's not really a very fun job. There's a reason why they pay people a lot of money to do it, he says. At least that's his contention. He says simply because there's not a guidebook or a handbook for it. He says every job that you could be trained for works for the CEO. Every job that you have somebody else you could look to for guidance is a job other than the CEO. So a CFO, they can, if they have accounting questions, they can look up accounting guides, accounting practices, they can go to school for accounting, they can call up other companies and find out what the best ways are to do accounting. Even if they want to do something illegal, they can find illegal ways to do accounting. There's always something out there to give them some guidance on that. And he kind of goes through all the different roles. He says, but for the job of a CEO, he says, pretty much my main job is doing two things. And both of them are impossible tasks. One is to solve the problems of the company that nobody else can solve. If anybody else in the company could solve them, by all means, they would. But by the time they get to my desk, they come to my desk and they're basically saying, with all of our training, all of our knowledge, all of our expertise, we can't find a solution, you solve it. He says that's a really hard thing to do, that all you're doing every single day is putting out fires and trying to solve problems that your entire team of all the smart and intelligent people that you've hired to work in this entire organization, none of them can solve this, and now you're being tasked with the impossible. And then, of course, the other one is you're being tasked with making decisions based on the unknown future, that you have to be able to predict the future and make decisions accordingly. And when you don't make decisions according to what the future is going to turn out, you're then blamed as though you somehow should have known it, because everybody else will have the power of hindsight. And hindsight, of course, is 20/20. Look at you and say, what an idiot. Why did you do that? I mean, you knew we all knew the pandemic was going to happen. I mean, everybody knew the whole world was going to shut down for a year, and yet you were going to do... He says it's a really difficult task. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting how he was saying it's the difficulties of it. The reality, though, is, like it or not, you are the CEO of You Incorporated. You are tasked with making decisions based on an uncertain future. You are tasked with solving the problems that nobody else in your life can solve. And so they're unique to you. There's not somebody else you can call up and say, hey, you've got the same wife I do, you've got the same kids I do, you've got the same life experiences I have, you've grown up in the same house as I have. What do you do in this situation? There's not a identical replica of you, and God has purposely created life to be unique. If it wasn't unique and we all had a cookie-cutter experience, because we always complain to God, how come my life is different than everybody else's? How come my life's so unique? Well, if it wasn't unique, then you could cut God out of it. You would just find somebody else who has your same model, right? Like if your dishwasher breaks, all you got to do is just go on a help site, find the forum for that dishwater model, and you can figure out how to fix it. It doesn't matter what it is nowadays. You can YouTube it or forum it and pretty much find a fix for it. I don't need to call a repairman to come to the house. If you're a little bit handy, you can just read through the forums and fix most things. What if you could do that with life? Well, you could cut God out of it. You wouldn't need God to help you with your unique situation, your unique life. You could just go find somebody else who's your same model, your same addition, your same marriage, and they could give you all the helps and all the fixes for it. But yet God purposely puts You Incorporated into unique situations that only you have ever experienced, so that you will be forced to rely on Him who knows the future, holds all things in His hands, and rely on Him in the process. What He does give us, though, is principles of wisdom to guide us along the way. And that's something we see throughout the Bible, and most focusedly in Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job are the books of wisdom that share little nuggets of wisdom. And in these nuggets of wisdom, keep in mind that it's what's called proverbial wisdom. And proverbial wisdom is sort of like if God had a Twitter account and He was trying to share some guidance for life and could only just kind of text out in 140 characters or less words of wisdom. That's kind of what you have in the book of Proverbs. They're just short, pithy statements that are truisms about life. And so He gives you some guidance on how to, for lack of better terms, how to not be an idiot with the decisions that you have to make. What? Huh? So what I want to do is I want to jump into Ecclesiastes chapter 10. And the reason why I'm picking up in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 is because he spent the first about 9 chapters giving you this basic summary of life. Life is short and death is inevitable. So just so you know, life is short and death is inevitable. And so if you're looking to find meaning in your life outside of a relationship with God, you're not going to find it. Because life is too short for a meaningful existence, and death is inevitable, and it's going to wipe away everything you've ever done. Which is why he comes to the conclusion that you'll see throughout the scriptures that this life is about nothing more than establishing, growing, and developing a loving relationship with God that you'll be able to enjoy for all eternity. So that's sort of the summary message, and when he gets to chapter 12, he kind of wraps all that up once again. But in chapters 10, 11, 12, he kind of pauses for a second. He says, okay, yeah, life is short, death is inevitable, but you're still alive. And you still have things to do here, and you're still going to have to live and move, and I want to give you some guidance for what to do with the life that you do have, because you will be here for some time, and so for the life that you do have, here is how you should live and the things you ought to do. And so he's going to give he's going to string together some Twitter-like proverbs, if you will, some Twitter-length proverbs, but he strings them together in a sort of coherent thought. And so I kind of want to just read through chapter 10, because I think it gives us a lot of good guidance for life, and just kind of show you how each of these different various proverbs that may seem disconnected are really connected quite together. And some things you may have already heard, you didn't even know you was in the scriptures, like this first one, Ecclesiastes 10, verse 1. As dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. The heart of the wise is inclined to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. Even as he walks along the road, a fool lacks sense and shows everyone just how stupid he is. Now, it's funny, that very first proverb there, you've heard it probably 100 times in your life. It's actually a common quote that we say all the time. We just didn't know it came from Scripture, right? What do we call it? We call it the fly in the ointment. Maybe you ever heard, fly? Idiot. So the fly in the ointment, and it's based on this passage. It just we take the truth and we kind of take it in a slightly different direction. Similar. We've kind of taken a little bit of the weight out of it. Usually, the fly in the ointment. That's typically where we say, the overall building design is great. It's just, why did they put the entrance over there? Right? It's like this. In other words, there's one little detail, one little kind of flaw in the system that just kind of makes you kind of go, I don't know. It's not quite right. It's kind of like my English literature teacher used to say that it doesn't, a great literary work with bad spelling is like a beautiful woman with meth teeth. Maybe that was a little too graphic for this morning. It's like, it looks beautiful, then she smiles, and you're like, ugh. And that was his excuse for really severely grading down any spelling errors we would ever turn in. That just stuck with me. Maybe I shouldn't share these things, but what he's saying is he's bringing out this concept, okay, that one small thing can ruin a really good thing. He says, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. Folly it's not, we think of folly as frivolity. No, he's saying it's a dumb decision, a really bad choice, something that lacked all wisdom. And basically the summary of this is a lifetime of integrity and reputation can be ruined in one night. One bad decision can really mess up a whole string of really good decisions. And just something to sort of keep in mind as you're guiding through it. And just we call them, bad lapses in judgment and just one little thing that we might have overlooked. And you think, how does it happen that somebody does something in a moment that seems to ruin a whole lifetime of achievement? And we've seen it over and over and over again. Think how many legacies and marriages and financial situations are ruined in, one bad night, one bad string of decisions. And I think he's going to get here to the point where he's saying that sometimes what happens is you're cultivating a bad path. If you notice, he goes on verse 2, he says, the heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool inclines to the left. In other words, in the heart of the wise, there's just kind of like this bias towards safety. There's a bias towards wise financial decisions. There's a bias towards kind of going middle of the road. And we call it middle of the road. Why do you call it middle of the road? Because on the edge, if you drive through Virginia Beach, it drops off pretty severely, right? So when you have a new driver, you're telling them, listen, you need to kind of hug the yellow line, and then when a car's coming, you kind of got to get over, but not too far over, because there's a really bad danger from a head-on collision, and there's also a really bad danger going in the ditch. The ditch is better than the head-on collision, but stay right down the middle of the whole road when there's nobody on the road, and then in your lane when there's another car coming, right? It's right down the middle. There needs to be this bias towards playing it safe, if you will. And for some of us, we struggle with that. Because the problem with playing it safe is we're missing out on adventure, we're missing out on possibilities, because it seems like as if there's excitement out there living, we call it living on the edge, right? But the problem is if you drive on the edge of the road, eventually your car will go in the ditch, right? Okay, how many of y'all have gone into a ditch? Yep, eventually you will. Whether you want to or not, you go into a ditch. How many of y'all seen a car in a ditch around here? All of us. Eventually, it's going to be you. I mean, eventually it will happen. Drive here long enough, somebody in your family will go into a ditch. But he's saying the heart of the wise is going to be inclined to stay in the most central position you possibly can. The heart of the fool, they're going to veer. And then I like what he says next. He says, even as the fool walks along the road, they lack sense. And they show everyone just what an idiot they are. I'm going to put this in modern terms. You ever found how much you can extrapolate about someone's life just by how they drive on the interstate? Come on, you've said it. Somebody's driving, you go, oh, what an idiot, right? You've summarized their whole life just by the way that they drive, right? Because you're looking at them going, you're putting everybody's life at danger, including your own, for what? For saving a few minutes? I remember driving to Richmond about 15 years ago. Now, if you're driving from Virginia Beach to Richmond, can you make up any time by speeding? No, it is bumper to bumper, 2 lanes, and even if you weave a little bit in traffic, what are you doing? Making up a quarter mile over that whole 2-hour stretch, right? So I'm driving up to D.C. one day with a friend, and there's this BMW, we'll never forget it. Every time there was an exit, he would go over to the exit lane, gun it, and then cut people off as he got back in, right? And he's been doing this now since somewhere around mid-Newport News going up to, we're up into Williamsburg almost by this point. Every single time he'd do it. And I realized he wasn't from this area when he got to a Williamsburg exit. I think it's called 199 on this side of Williamsburg. It's a left exit. And he sees the exit coming, and he gets over the left lane. I start laughing. My buddy wasn't from here. He's like, what's so funny? I'm like, oh, if he tries it on this one, it's going to be funny. Because if you know this exit, I don't know what it's like now, but I know before they did all the road work and all, when that left lane, there is no ramp at all. It is real short, and then it cuts hard left with a really heavy divider right there that either you crash, there is no time to get back in. There's no room there at all. And the best part about it is if you get off there, there's no reentry. It's not like you just get off and get back on. It's an exit only. It doesn't get back on. It takes you the long, slow, scenic route around Williamsburg. And sure enough, BMW got over there, and I think everybody on the road was so fed up with him. It was like a NASCAR restart. Everybody just bunched up, and that guy slammed on his brakes, almost hit the buckets they put out there, and then had to go off. And we laughed for the next 10, 15 minutes. Why? Because he was an idiot, right? You can tell by how somebody drives that they're an idiot. I remember another time driving with a friend of mine, and I made a mistake. And this guy next to me, he had to do the idiot thing. He had to speed, he had to, cut somebody off, speed up next to me, match my speed until I acknowledged and looked over because he had something he needed to share with me. And so I looked over, he gave me the look, gave me some sign language, and then sped on about his way and cut me off. And I'm like, it's kind of embarrassing, odd, awkward that happens. Guy next to me just looks at me, he goes, could you imagine living with that guy? It's amazing what you can extrapolate. An idiot looks like an idiot when they're on the road. Just by seeing them on the road from a distance, you can tell somebody's an idiot because there's just things about their life and the way they handle themselves. You can tell from a mile away that guy's not going anywhere good. And the question comes up is, do you want to ride in a car with an idiot? Is that a good place to be? Are you inclined to wisdom or are you inclined to make bad decisions? And are you going to hang out with people who are inclined to bad decisions? There's a proverb over in Proverbs 13:20 that kind of parallels this. He says, he who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. So often my kids will ask me, hey, Dad, can I go out with, so-and-so and do such and such? And my answer will be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Why? What do you think I'm going to do? And this is the issue, right? It's like, I don't know. I can't predict the future. I have no idea what you're going to do. I don't have this thought that you are going to go out and intentionally do something dumb. I don't have this thought that you're going to intentionally go out and put your life at risk. But I know who you want to go hang out with. And I know how they drive, how they metaphorically live their life. And I know eventually if you hang out with that crowd long enough, eventually I'm going to get a phone call. Whether it be from you or from a police officer or from a medical technician at the hospital who's going to call me up and say, I've got your son here, et cetera, and so forth. I don't know why you shouldn't go. I can't tell you what is going to happen. I can't predict what you will do. And it's not that I think bad of you. There's just some situations that are better than others in life, and this doesn't seem like a good idea. Yeah, but can I go? Yes, the dilemmas of being a CEO of a household and a CEO of your own life. He goes on to say, if a ruler's anger arises against you, don't leave your post, for calmness can lay great offenses to rest. Better translation or easier translation, understand right where it says, if your boss is angry, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome big mistakes. And the idea here is don't make rash decisions when you're angry. Somebody offends you, you get really upset. It's really easy to say, that's it, I'm quitting my job, I'm out of here, I'm done. And you'll even go tell 5 of your friends, I'm done, I'm quitting. And then they go home like, oh my gosh, somebody's quitting. Well, then sometimes word gets back to the boss, so-and-so's thinking about quitting. It's like, just keep your mouth shut. Just don't make decisions when you're angry or rash. It's not a good time to make a life-changing, life-altering decision. So be careful who you're living with and walking with and running with. Be careful about making decisions when you're angry. And then he's going to go into a whole section. I would call it the but what about section. And this is hard, especially when you're trying to teach wisdom or when you're trying to apply wisdom to your own life. And this is the issue that we have with proverbial wisdom. It's the but what abouts. Now keep in mind, Proverbs are general rules of thumb. 9 out of times, if you do A, you will get B. There is an understanding and an acknowledgement that yes, there is the 1 out of 10 that don't. 1 out of 10 dentists don't recommend that toothpaste. I don't know why. 1 out of 10 times, it works out differently. Yes, I know that if you work hard, stay in school, it is a proven path towards general success. Yeah, but what about Ralph, who did all that and didn't turn out good? Or what about Mark Zuckerberg, who dropped out of Harvard and now he's a billionaire? But what about, right? There's always the but what abouts. And he's going to get into this but what about section and kind of say, listen, you can but what about yourself to death. But if you try to live in the but what about area of life, it is like running a gauntlet of basically saying the odds are stacked against you again and again and again, and somehow you think you're going to continue to be the exception. So, he says, there is an evil I have seen under the sun. When he says an evil, he's saying it's like, here's some stuff that just is kind of messed up and makes you angry about life, okay? I get this. It shouldn't be this way, but let's face it, there is sort of a general injustice that not everything works as it ought to in life. And so he's going to kind of address the but what abouts. There are some times where the leader makes a dumb decision. He says there's the errors that arise from the ruler. A fool is put in a high position, but the deserving ones occupy low positions. Or some of your translations may say the rich occupy low positions. It's a word that means the worthy ones. So it's taking that word worthy, valuable, whatever. Does this not happen? Where somebody gets a promotion that you look at and go, that's just unfair. It's unjust. It's not right. They got the promotion, I didn't. Now, it's easy to go to the but what about piece and go, so why even bother working? I was told if I work hard and I got a good fit rep and everything like that, then I would get promoted, but I just get passed over. If I'm going to get passed over, then why even bother? Why even try? It's like, yes, don't live your life in the but what abouts. There are times where things don't happen the way they ought to happen. But don't then let that become your guidance for life, that you're going to live in the but what about section. Or he says, I've seen servants on horseback while princes go on foot like slaves. If you've been watching the news recently, Juan Soto got signed for $745 million over, 10, 15 years, something like that? In other words, he's going to make more than all of the teachers in the city of Virginia Beach combined every year for the next 10, 15 years. Is that fair? No. Is the message, well, you should have learned how to play baseball? No. I remember this because when I lived in New Orleans, the school I was at, there was a lady who led a ministry, and she'd gather up students at the seminary to go down to the inner city projects. And the projects in New Orleans are on par with the ones you'll see in any of the roughest cities in America. I remember driving to the projects. We probably drove for 5-10 minutes through what looked like a war zone because all these projects had been condemned because they got so dangerous and so unkept they had to close them down. So we drove about 10-15 minutes through all of the ones that had been closed down to get to the ones that were still open. And I remember sitting there, and on our way home, the director of the mission, asked me, what my thoughts are or whatnot, and I remember saying something. I was saying it sort of jokingly, but her response to it was very insightful, something I never forget. She said, "What do you think?" I said, I think those kids need to learn how to play basketball. I don't see how else they're going to get out of there. And she looked at me and she says, that is the message our society tells them. The reality is education is how they get out of there, not basketball. Because Juan Soto makes headlines for playing sports. And you see over and over again the athlete says, I grew up in the projects and this was my ticket out of here. Yeah, that's 1 in a million. 1 in 10, 20, 30 million. The reality, though, is the general rule of thumb is work hard, get an education. That is your best ticket out of there for success, not the exception. Don't live in the realm of exception. Then he gets into, you can't control accidents that are going to happen. This whole idea of working hard and, there'll be a payoff for it. He's thinking, but what about that guy who, it says, there's a guy who dug a pit and he fell into it and died. There's a guy who, coring out a cave and he got bit by a snake in the process, or there's a guy who's coring stones, one of them fell on him, or the guy who's splitting logs and he got cut by it. There's always the, I'd want to get a job, but, it's dangerous. That's some dangerous work there. Well, whatever job you do, there's going to be inherent danger to it, right? You don't give the whatabouts. It's just at some point you've got to pick a profession and go into it. There's going to be inherent dangers in them. Then he gives two that are sort of juxtaposed to each other in verse 10, 11. He says, if the axe is dull and the edge is unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. Verse 11, if a snake bites before it's charmed, there's no profit to the charmer. These are connected. How so? Well, he's using the old story. Maybe you ever heard the old story about the two axe cutters. They show up for work every day together, and they're cutting down trees, and they get paid by the tree. And one guy works 10 hours straight from 5 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, works 10 hours straight. The other guy takes a 2-hour lunch break. But the guy who takes a 2-hour lunch break always ends up cutting down more wood than the guy who worked for 10 hours. And so one day finally says, how is it fair that you work 8 hours, I work 10 hours, and you cut more wood than I do every single day, and you take a 2-hour lunch break? He says, well, on my lunch break, I walk home, my wife makes me lunch, and I sharpen my axe. And then I come back to work with a sharpened axe and work smarter, not harder, is sort of the adage, right? So sharpen the axe, work smarter, not harder. And so, yes, that is true. But you also can't skip the hard work part, is the snake charming thing, right? And this is where I would go to the YouTuber generation. For some of you youngins who grew up on the internets and TikToks and stuffs, back in the day we had Discovery Channel, we had Animal Planet, and we had this guy named Steve Irwin. We called him the Crocodile Hunter. Crikey, and he wore this, these really short shorts. He looked like a guy from Comedy Central, was a police officer, but he wore these little short shorts and the tan shirt. And he would go run through the jungle, and he'd jump on the back of crocodiles, and he'd pick up snakes. He would purposely go to Australia and Africa to find the most deadly venomous snakes in the whole world. And he'd pick them up, and never had any incident with any of the snakes he ever picked up. Well, now in this modern generation, of course, you've got how many YouTubers who want to be the next Steve Irwin, right? And I shouldn't say it's hilarious, but at the very least I'll go, idiot, right? Because that's the theme of this message. How many idiots have you seen already on TikTok who, look at the cobra, bam, get tagged, right? And then all of a sudden they're freaking out. They got to get medical. I've probably seen 10, 15 of these videos where these guys are picking up deadly, dangerous snakes, get tagged, and then the next shot of them is they're in the hospital. Why? Because they wanted the fame of Steve Irwin without putting in the work of Steve Irwin. And so he's saying, listen, just because you got a dangerous snake in a box does not make you a snake charmer. If the snake bites you before you've learned the craft of snake charming, what good is that, right? I mean, you'll still get hits on your YouTube, but you're not exactly going to become the next Steve Irwin. You're just going to become a joke, right? That's about it. And so he's saying that if the snake bites before it's charmed, it's no profit to the charmer. It takes hard work and dedication to get you to that place. So yes, you need to have, work smarter, not harder, but there's also still no substitute to hard work. It's still going to take hard work. You can't cut corners in life just simply by outsmarting everything along the way. And then he says, verse 10, he says, all right, now the future is uncertain, but don't let that be an excuse for laziness. Verse 14, nobody knows what's coming, for who can tell you what's going to happen after them? The toil of the fool wearies them. They don't know their way back to town. I'll get back to that in a second. Through laziness, the rafters sag because of idle hands, and the house leaks. And then I'm going to cut down to chapter 11, verse 1 and following. It picks up the same idea. It says, ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. You don't know. You might. Invest in 7 ventures, even 8, because you don't know what disaster may come upon the land. If the clouds are full of water, they pour forth rain on the earth, or their tree falls. Wherever it falls, that's where it is. Now, whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. All right, what is he saying in all that? There's always an excuse to be lazy, right? There's always an excuse to put something off, right? There's never a good day to work on your marriage, right? I mean, that's fun. We always talk about, in probably about 4 or 5 weeks, Pastor Chris will come up here and he'll talk to you and encourage you to try to join a small group. And I know what you're going to do. We really should. We really ought to. One of my New Year's resolutions is I wanted to get better at finances. I really should take the Dave Ramsey class this year. I really need to work on our marriage this next year. In 2025, I really want to make sure that's a big private. That'll happen. You'll have this thought that you'll want to do those things. But then the other thing will come in it's such a busy time right now. This isn't a good season for me. It'll be a lot better in the fall. Or do y'all do this in the summer? Because in the summer, I don't have what I'm going on with the projects right now. There's always seems like a better time to do something than right now. And so it's sort of the best is the enemy of good. And so he says, when you're going to plant crops, it's that guy who's always looking at the weather going, I don't really have a weather app because I'm living in 3000 BC here. So I don't know. I don't know if today's a good day to plant on because I might, if I plant too early, it's going to wash away. That's always happened whenever I try to plant my yard. Whenever I used to reseed the lawn, every single time I try to do it, it'd wash out like monsoon would come. You with me on this? It could not rain for 3 weeks straight. As soon as I put seed on the yard, monsoon, I'll just be walking down the street looking at all that grass seed I paid Home Depot for. Right? Always happens, right? He says, but look, if you're just watching the clouds every day, there's never a good time to do what you need to do. There never is. There's never a good time to do maintenance. See the thing about the rafters sagging, the roof leaking, right? That wouldn't happen if you did the regular maintenance. But we don't do the regular maintenance. Why? Because there's never a Saturday where you wake up and you go, I think today's maintenance Saturday, right? What needs an extra coat? What screws can I look around need to be tightened, right? What caulk seals haven't, gone bad that I can, go ahead and clean? I'm just going to I'm going to pressure wash the house just in case there's any kind of mold building up that I can't see yet. Says nobody ever, right? But there's never a good time to do the things you ought to do. There's never a good time to do the things you need to do. There's always a better time to do it sometime later. And, one of the jobs of a CEO is you force your company to do things that nobody thinks to do when you need to do them. It's one of the things the CEO does. And they push people to do things that they don't want to do. We need to do an audit, and your accountant looks at you like, why in God's name do we have to do an audit? Because we need to. Because I got to make sure we have our finances in order in case, what we're looking to do in the strategic. Are we going to do that yet? I don't know if we are. I don't know what's going to happen. I just want to put us in the best possible position for when that might come. And so a good CEO will not put things off. One thing I want to hit back to there when he says, or I just want to hit this, I'll say this one line. Your want-tos will become a you wish I had of if you don't do them now. Your want-tos, I really want to get my finances in order. I really want to work on my marriage. I really want to spend some time with the kids. I really want to get better at. They'll become I wish I hads if you don't do them now. But that one thing in there where he says in the middle of it, he says, the toil of fools wearies them. They do not know the way to town. I don't know if this happens when you guys go on trips. This always happens with me if you're going on a road trip somewhere you've never been before. It always seems like the drive there takes a lot longer than the drive home, right? Part of it's because the kids are always asking how much further, and thank God I now live at a time where I can finally just say, get out your phone and Google it, all right? It will tell you, right? I used to just always tell them 5 more minutes. It is 5 more minutes. It's going to be a lot of 5 minutes, but yeah. Why does the drive there take longer? Because I don't know where we're going. On the way home, I've got markers. There's an old story about, if you gave somebody a mundane task and you told person A that they needed to pick up this wood, carry it to the backyard, then tomorrow pick up the wood, carry it back to the front yard. You have them do it for 30 days. How long before they go insane? Right? It's an old experiment. However, if you had 2 people and one of them you just told move it to the front yard, the next day you told her in the back, but the other one you said, if you move this wood to the front yard and then move it back to the backyard, every single day, do that for a full month, I will give you $1 million come February 1st. Who do you think's going to wear out? Who do you think's going to be whistling while they work? Why? One person has a sense of where they're going. The toil of fool wearies them because they don't know the way to town. When you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you're working for, it gets a lot harder to do the work. One of the questions that every CEO has to be able to answer is, what do you want to see accomplished? What do you want to do? What is it that you want to see happen in this organization or this company? With your life, what do you want to see happen in your life? For my life, years ago, I had this sense, there's 3 things I really wanted. One is I wanted to be married to my best friend. I wanted to cultivate the kind of relationship with my kids that they had the opportunity for success in life and I could have a lifelong friendship with them. And I wanted to be a pastor of the kind of church that Jesus wanted Virginia Beach to have. Those were really like my 3 goals in life. And when you have those as your goals, they become a part of your budget. They become what you're focusing on and wanting to do. And with that, I'm going to end off on Ecclesiastes chapter 10. He says, chapter 10, verse 19. Now, this is a verse that seems antithetic to everything you'd read in Scripture, and you're surprised it's even in the Bible, but I got to tell you why it's here. I'm going to read it as it is in the NIV, then I'm going to give you the practical translation of it. He says, a feast is made for laughter, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer for everything. Now, even if you've never read the Bible, you're probably thinking, that doesn't sound like what you ought to read in the Bible. Usually it says, money's not the answer to everything, but here the Bible's saying money's, I didn't know the Bible was in here. Didn't know the verse was in here. Well, keep in mind, put it in context. He spent the better part of chapters 5 and 6 telling you that life isn't all about money, the futility of going after wealth, he who loves money is never going to have enough, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so this is a balance of everything. He said 2 chapters about the dangers of money, and he says this one statement. Let me give you the better translation probably of what he's trying to get across. Parties are fun, but parties cost money. Is that a fair statement? If you have a kid who has a birthday and you want to have a birthday party, and you're thinking about where you're going to have the birthday party, what do you find out? Parties are fun, but parties cost money, right? Can we have ponies come and have everybody have their own pony? That'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun, but that would also cost a lot of money. Going back to those 3 goals I had. Married to my best friend. Have kids who grow up who have best chance for success in life and want to come home and pastor a church like Jesus would want us to have here in Virginia Beach. Those cost money. One of the things that, especially for the first 2 is developing a close friendship with your wife is going to cost money. Developing a great relationship with your kids is going to cost money. The question is, are you budgeting for memories or are you budgeting for stuff? That old adage of the best things in life aren't things. I think the finish of that is their memories. And so one of the things we started doing was having what we called family dinners. And so once a week we'd have a family dinner, and then also once a week we'd try to go out on a date with my wife. And so we would do things. And so, go to theater and, go out to dinner. All that cost money. Having a family dinner. And family dinner was something either I'd spend a lot of money on the dinner or I would spend a lot of time making the dinner. Both in a good result. But both created events that everybody in the family looked forward to. And then we'd play a game afterwards. You blocked off everything. You got your homework done before that. You didn't have any activities that night. If you had something else, you knew you had to cancel it. And it made memories. And now, the kids will ask, when are we having family dinner? When are we having family dinner? Parties are fun. Parties are a central theme of life. If you read through Ecclesiastes, he talks about parties all the time. He loved parties. But he says parties aren't the end in life. Life is short. You're going to die. Have a loving relationship with God, but enjoy the time you have here. But to do that, you're going to have to budget well, and you're going to have to work hard. So you need to live a wise life so you can have the funds for what money is really useful for. Your kids will forget everything you've ever bought them for Christmas. But they'll remember when you took them to a ball game. They'll remember if you took them to a live show. They'll remember the vacations you went on. They'll remember the experiences that you created with them. They may not remember every game night and every family dinner, but they'll love family dinners and game nights. Create memories. The best things in life aren't things. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your grace over me. I thank you, Lord, for your grace over all of us, Lord, as we struggle to make wise decisions in our life. I ask, Lord, that as we're tasked with being the CEO of making the hard decisions in life in light of an uncertain future, that you may strengthen both our faith but also our wisdom. That we might be able to make wise choices with the various situations that are put before us. And in all things, may we rely on you, Father, for your grace. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.